For working with the air-dried clay and for making the figures that will go inside your Calaveras box, it's important to have your box completed so you will get accurate proportions for the size of your figures, and having that close by, you can judge the amount of clay that you're going to need. The other things that are important is to have a piece of wax paper that you're going to work on, the bendable, flexible wire, which you can pre-cut, and this is going to assist with attaching the head, arms, and legs to the torso. And they just need to be small pieces, no more than a ½ inch in length. And if you have those pre-cut, it's easier when you start making your piece. Having a little bit of water handy to work with, and a toothpick and a brush. So all of those items at your table before you begin. Each table will have its own container of air-dried clay. And again, make sure that you close the lid lightly after you're done working. And you can just reach inside, have the bag that the clay is in sealed tightly. And remember, you'll probably need just a small quantity for making your figure. So that's going to be more than enough. And I want to reseal the bag, put the lid on tightly, and make sure that that's not going to be exposed to the air while I begin working. And the first thing I'm going to do is pull a chunk off of this clay and begin to make the torso. And I'm going to probably even use less than that. So if I want a skeleton form, again, the traditional Mexican craft forms are very simple in size. And I can use this skeleton as a guide, and I can see that I've probably got more than what I need. And my fingers, if I get them a little moist, I can smooth this clay out and begin to shape and form it. And what I'm going to do is have kind of the torso and waist size. And again, have my box handy. That seems like it might be bigger than the amount I need. I can use my toothpick as a tool for cutting excess clay off. And shape that. Compare it with the skeleton in the box. It's amazing how very little clay you're going to need to do this. Okay, so I flatten that out. I can start shaping it. And I'm going to make a head. Head is very egg shape, so I can use my fingertip and roll a small ball. Again, on the wax paper, it's not going to stick. Having that water handy will help with my fingers not sticking to the clay. And then I can compare it to the size of the body. And that's looking pretty good. And here's where my wire will come in handy. So I'll poke that into the bottom of the head and poke that into the torso. And you can see how, again, I need no more than a ½ inch. ½ inch is already starting to become a bit much. And now I'm going to take a little bit of clay and make a coil with it. And get this working between my fingertips. Roll this coil out, and I'm going to wrap it around the neck to help support that wire in place. And just very, very gently wrap that around like a scarf. And here's where my toothpick is going to come in handy as a tool. So I can begin to blend that into the torso a little bit better. The wire's completely hidden, kind of making a neck. And I can also use this toothpick to create features on the face. And again, very, very simple features. Here's where I can use my brush to smooth out this area just by getting it a little wet. Paper towel's handy. And if I brush along the clay, I get a much smoother surface. I get those little ridges from the toothpick removed. Makes the clay stickier, so I don't want to hold tightly onto it. And I'm going to go ahead and start to put the face in place. And I'm just going to use the tip of the toothpick. Again, I'm doing a skeletal figure, and you may be doing a regular human figure, and your details are going to look different. You might even be doing an animal. But for the skeletal figure, I'm just going to exaggerate those eye sockets because that's what we think about when we think of skeletons. And then its smile is just going to be a series of teeth. Once this is dry, and you want it to dry overnight, once the skeletal figure is dry, I can then proceed to put black paint. I can paint the whole thing white and then put some black paint into those facial features. And here I can use the toothpick to define the chin. I can also go ahead and start putting the ribs in place with just very, very simple little marks. If you want to become more elaborate and complicated with your figure, that's fine. But again, the traditional Calaveras is very, very simple in appearance, not exactly anatomically correct. And then I would proceed to do arms and legs in a similar way, where I create coils. Keep in mind the size of my box. Am I getting a little too big here? Oops. Pretty close. I could remove a little bit more off the torso area to play safe. Give it more of a sense of hips. And then begin the process with the legs. So if I want the legs to, if I want this figure standing up, I want the legs pretty thick for it to do that. I could wind up having a seated skeletal form, and again, I'm going to do the same thing, push that little wire into the thigh, push the wire into the, what would be the pelvic area, got a leg in place. Here I don't need to put a coil around, I can just start to smooth over the clay, blend it together with my toothpick so I don't see that separate mark. The wires are really important for supporting these little pieces because they are pretty fragile. Although the two examples that I have here are really quite old, and they've lasted at least 15 years, if not a little bit longer. And if I want to have a leg that's maybe kicking a little bit, this is where I can start shaping it now. And the foot will be just a very, very simple little bend. I can try and make these look like very bony knees. Thin out. Think about how bones look. Rolling the toothpick helps with pushing the clay around. And again, just very simple indication of toes, or little skeletal feet, bony feet. And I would keep doing that until I have my figure exactly as it is, as I want it to be. And then I would let this clay dry, put it on a piece of paper, slide it into my drawer, and let it sit overnight, and then come back the following day and be ready to paint it. And you would use hot glue to put it into your box. And you can see that this one's painted. It's white. And if you look closely down below, the hot glue is supporting this figure. The other thing which I've mentioned is the use of the pins for putting the box together. And you would still put some white glue in place and then support your box with adding those pins. There's a little fence in the back of this one, and if you look at the bottom of the box, you can see that those are all attached with pins that stick straight into the fence and also into the street sign. So that should be a good amount of information, and you're ready to get going. The excess clay is still soft, and there's a lot of it here. I'm going to just squish it back into the container and make sure that it's closed airtight. And that's it.